We will now return to private members' public bills for second reading. We will continue with the honourable member from Cape Breton South. Now, member from Cape Breton South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure that the microphone.
Try again.
Boy, we're having fun this session. On now.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'll try again to
Could you really
say a few remarks. Yes, I could have went on without the microphone, but unfortunately it wouldn't be recorded. When I first rose in my place here before the hour of interruption for the emergency debate, I said that I was going to rag the puck a little bit on this bill because of the fact we needed to keep the debate going while we're waiting for the debate, but I don't need to do that anymore. But I want to, again, though, in case some members were absent when I first started speaking about this bill, the Bill 225, I want to congratulate the member from Hants West for bringing this bill forward. Certainly it's a bill that our party can certainly support and will support. And it's a bill that brings back memories for a lot of people when you start talking about hockey and what it's meant to the people of Nova Scotia over the years and what it means to the people of Nova Scotia today. And as I stated before, Mr. Speaker, I grew up with hockey. I was born next door to the old Sydney Forum, and as such became a rink rat at a very early age. And one of the benefits about being a rink rat is that you don't pay to get in the building. You know, and I can honestly say that I never paid to get into Sydney Forum all the time I was growing up. As a matter of fact, some people would even say, Mr. Speaker, that I was literally born in the coal bin at the back of the Sydney Forum, because that's how our house was. But I was a rink rat and proud of it, and as such, in the late 40s and early 50s, I was pleased to be able to be first of all, I started off as the water boy for the Sydney Millionaires, which was one of the teams in the Big Four League, and a great team over the years that it was. And in those days, when you were a water boy, you didn't have the water bottles like you have today. You had a quart beer bottle, usually O'Keefe's or Olin's or one of those, wrapped in tape, you know, and with a little handle and tape on the top. And you'd have to go and get that bottle filled every 10, 15 minutes, and everybody drank the same bottle. You just passed it down and it's an amazing thing about that. Nobody ever died from doing that, you know, in those days and today, you know. And then as I got a little older, like 8 or 9 years old, I graduated to be assistant stick boy and then stick boy of the Millionaires. And my fondest memories were going to Glace Bay to play the Glace Bay Miners on Saturday evening, and you had to fight your way in the town and fight your way out of the town, you know, and I'd be just down the back watching our fans taking on the Glace Bay fans on Saturday night. But, Mr. Speaker, when you were a rink rat and when you were growing up literally with hockey, you got to observe a lot of things, and a lot of things happened in a building like the old Sydney Forum. For example, I believe the seating capacity was something like 2,000 with the Forum, and some games in the Maritime Major League, and when we had the big teams down there and the big names, there were 5,000 people in that building with one entrance, and the bullpen designed to hold about 15 or 20 people would have 300, 10 deep, with the screen ripped apart so that people could see over the ice, and one exit, one small exit. And one wonders whether we had any fire marshals in those days, you know, because if there was ever a fire in that building at the time, you had no chance. But thankfully, over the years, everybody that worked there kept a pretty close eye on that. But in those days, everybody used to bring their own refreshments as well. And I would have to clean those refreshments to what was left of them after the game was over. And I'd start from one end with a broom, and by the time I got down the other end, the Maraca bottles were that high. you know, and so you can imagine the interest that the people had, because of course there was no liquor license or anything in the buildings, but everybody just brought their own, you know, and it worked. Nobody ever died from that, or nobody ever got arrested or anything like that. But I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, I was really pleased to be able to grow up with hockey, because I think it taught me and other guys and my age discipline at an early age. You respected those who came to Sydney from afar to play senior hockey, and I know that some of you would remember people like Nick Pizzadni, you know, Big George Robertson, those people that came down from up the line to play there. Pizzadni used to play nets with a cigar in his mouth, and when they were going to have when the play was up the other end, he'd smoke the cigar. When it started down his end, he'd put it on the back of the net. You know, you don't think you'd see that around today. But we had all kinds of characters that played. And you know, when I got a little bit older, I played common school hockey like probably everybody in this building did, and I certainly wasn't any better or worse than anybody here. Even the member from Timberley Prospect was probably better than me when he played, you know, in those days. But when I got to Sydney Academy, I majored in two things at Sydney Academy. One was hockey, and the other one was Friday night dances. You know, and it was amazing that I ever got through the school, but I can proudly say that I graduated. Don't ask me what my marks were, but I graduated. But I was very proud to be able to say that I played with Sydney Academy and their hockey team in the days when they had the two leagues, the Juvenile League and the Interscholastic A Hockey League, and was pleased to be able to do that. And I believe that my training as a rink rat and playing under the clock on Friday nights, the milk bottle clock, because they turned the lights out. Nobody in the building but the rink rats, and you know, there was a few exchanges on that ice when you couldn't see what you were doing there. But it gave us the impetus to keep on going and to play more hockey. But I can remember moving on, Mr. Speaker, to juvenile hockey and winning a championship with the St. Joseph's Juveniles, and at that time it was a juvenile team sponsored by the St. Joseph Church, and 9 of us were Protestants that were on the team. And the general manager was a guy by the name of Father Reverend Finley McClellan, and he used to say, if you win the championship, even you Protestants are going to heaven, you know, at the time. So we had a good hockey team that year, and yes, Mr. Speaker, we won the championship that year. Beat St. Teresa's, as a matter of fact, and I don't know how many Protestants they had on the team, but anyway, but then, Mr. Speaker, I loved the game so much that I tried to keep on going with it, and I ended up playing Junior A hockey over in North Sydney with the Northside Junior Victorias at the time, and again, we had a very successful year over there, and at that year, Sydney didn't have a team, so a number of us went over to North Sydney, played with the Junior A team over there, and at that time, the Montreal Canadiens were looking for people down in the Maritimes to attend a walk-on camp in Moncton. They had the Moncton Junior Beavers franchise up there, which was an elite junior team in those days, and so anyway, they were inviting walk-ons. So we had 6 or 7 of us got in the car and went up to Moncton, you know, for the walk-on, and one of us made the Junior Beavers. It wasn't me, and got into the Montreal chain. But I can remember vividly, I think I put 2 steps on the ice, and the guy says, "You're gone." You know, took one look at me, and you know, so that was my sole attempt to go further in hockey. He just said, he was cutting, and he said, looked at me, he said, "Off." You know, so. But anyway, that was the end of my hockey career. I went to work after that. But anyway, one of the things that I wanted to talk about briefly, and I'm glad the member brought this bill to the House. Hockey's legendary in Nova Scotia, and he mentioned some of the things that we've been able to do in Nova Scotia over the years with a relatively small population. And he referred in his remarks to the Halifax Voyageurs, to some of the great senior teams we had, the Windsor Maple Leafs, teams like that throughout the years, Halifax Wolverines, the Truro Bearcats, yeah, that's right, I can go on and on, the Sydney Millionaires. But I want to take it a little bit further here. The population our size has produced some great hockey greats, great hockey greats. Danny Gallivan, for example, you know, in the voice of the Montreal Canadiens for years. Parker McDonald, I don't know how many people in this remember Parker McDonald, played on a line with Gordie Howe and Alex Del Vecchio, you know, for the Detroit Red Wings. Parker grew up in the same street that I did, and his brothers played hockey with me. And I watched Parker play when I was a young fella. And along with Big Al McNeil, who was a Stanley Cup coach with the Montreal Canadiens, he's from Sydney, you know, and he probably would have spent more time in Montreal had Henri Richard not decided that it was either going to be me or him. You remember that? So Alistair went on to the Calgary Flames after that, sometime after. And John Jr. Hanna, you know, from Sydney, another. And I bring these names up because all of these hockey players played when there were only 6 teams in the National Hockey League, you know, and that was some feat for a small area, for example, like Sydney, to have Parker, Al McNeil, Junior Hanna, Big Huey Campbell, you remember Big Huey Campbell, you know, and Normie Ferguson, Paul Jigger-Andrea, you know, all of these people played back in the days when you really had to be good to get in the league then. Alfie Lejeune, a referee product from Sydney as well, and all of these guys played in the days when it was an elite, really an elite hockey league, and there weren't very many opportunities. So, you know, an area like our size produced a lot of greats in hockey, but, you know, we also produced what some would consider we did the impossible, you know, and I was pleased to be involved as mayor in Sydney, to be involved in the AHL team, the Cape Breton Oilers, but, you know, the history of the Cape Breton Oilers was, in fact, it was the Nova Scotia Oilers before that, and we had built a new building called Centre 200, for the paltry sum of $15 million, paltry by today's standards, but it was a huge investment by the City of Sydney in 1985 to celebrate our 200th anniversary. So, Mr. Speaker, when we built the building, we needed a tenant. And we went fishing for an AHL team, and we promised that if we did get an AHL team, that we would fill the place and we would make it work. Well, the Nova Scotia Oilers were having problems, and we went after the Nova Scotia Oiler franchise, but first of all, I had meetings out in Winnipeg with John Ferguson and Barry Shenkarow from the Winnipeg Jets at the time, and the Jets sort of abused me a little bit when I went after them because they led me down so far down the path, and all the time they wanted to go into Moncton. So they got a deal out of me. And then what they did was they just once they got the deal out of me, they bartered that with Moncton and got a better deal from Moncton, and that's where they went. So I wasn't going to be bitten twice in my role as chairman of Centre 200 and as mayor of Sydney. We went after the Cape Breton Oilers, the Nova Scotia Oilers, who we knew were leaving Halifax, and made a deal to have went out and talked to Sater and the guy that owned the team at the time, the Gainers guy, Pockington, yeah. And we sat down with those guys and we cooked the deal, but the only way I would cook the deal with them is that we owned half the franchise. The franchise had to be half owned by the Centre 200 Commission. So we made a deal for them to come to Sydney, and there's a funny story because after they came to Sydney, of course, there was no team in Halifax. And when there was no team in Halifax, we might be a little jeopardy there was no other team in Nova Scotia. So I called up Ron Wallace sometime after we had got the team in Sydney, and I said to Ron, he was my counterpart mayor in Halifax at the time, and I said to him, Ron, what are you guys going to do about a hockey team in Halifax? And he says, we already have a hockey team. And I said, no, you don't. That team is in Sydney now. He said, just a minute. So he put the phone down, he went back, and he came back to the phone, and he said, the Nova Scotia Oilers went to Sydney. And I said, I know that, Ron. I'm wondering what you're going to do for a team. And he said, I'll get back to you. So, you know, it wasn't too long after that, the Nordique were born there, and it gave us quite a rivalry. And that went on for about 7 or 8 years. And, you know, the value of having a hockey program like that, as soon as we put Centre 200 up, this little area called Sydney, population 30,000, with the help of the surrounding areas in Cape Breton, brought a professional hockey franchise into the area, and also 2 new hotels went up on the waterfront almost immediately. So the hockey spin-off was great, and it was certainly appreciated by the business community in Sydney. And of course, once the American Hockey League became too expensive, to be in the Canadian, because of the Canadian dollar, because of salaries and all of the above. The rinks weren't big enough. The Quebec Major Junior League followed, and the Cape Breton Screaming Eagles have been there now for a dozen years in Centre 200 and doing very well. So, I mean, for a population area in Nova Scotia of less than 1 million people, for a population area in my area of 100,000 people in industrial Cape Breton, we felt very proud of the fact that we have a Calder Cup banner hanging in Centre 200, that the Quebec Major Junior League Screaming Eagles are on the verge of getting a Memorial Cup, I think, in the next year or two. And we're going to try to beat Halifax to that punch, but no problem. The member from Victoria the Lake says, and I appreciate his comments. But I was real pleased that the bill came here because, Mr. Speaker, hockey is history in Nova Scotia. It has a deep history, it has a long history, and everybody can argue where the first game of hockey was played, and I certainly know that wherever it was in every corner of Nova Scotia at some point, and was in every corner of Nova Scotia. And I believe that it is the right thing to do. And again, I want to congratulate the member on bringing this bill to the House. And we certainly will be supporting the bill. And I want to say to everybody in the House that if you want to get an early education in hockey, tell your grandchildren to be rink rats. Thank you very much.
The Honourable, the Minister of Health Promotion and Protection.
Mr. Speaker, the members opposite started heckling before I even started. It's going to be a good 10 minutes, I'm sure. I won't be long tonight. I do want to add my voice to support of the Act to declare ice hockey to be the provincial sport of Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, I know a little bit about hockey. I've had the good fortune of having parents that recognized the need to keep their sons and daughters busy, and hockey in our family was part of our family, part of our tradition, and I played hockey through the Sackville Minor Hockey Program. Later went on to referee and do the lines through Sackville Minor Hockey and then beyond. As well, I also had an opportunity to coach young people, Mr. Speaker, and currently I'm on the board of directors of a junior hockey franchise in Sackville that has had 30 years of success, although we went 27 years before we actually won the Nova Scotia Junior B Championship. Then we won it 3 years in a row, and we also won 3 years in a row the Atlantic Championship. A team that's been blessed to have great players, a good executive, some solid coaching, and I'd be remiss if I didn't point out the fact that under the coach leadership of Andy Conrad, the team went on to win 3 Atlantic Championships, not recently, but in the last couple of years. Mr. Speaker, I think there are some unsung heroes with respect to hockey in Nova Scotia, and particularly the moms and the dads that do the job of driving their kids around, raising the money that's necessary. And I wonder, and have wondered out loud, how my parents with one vehicle were able to take 5 kids to 5 different rinks all around Halifax and make sure we got there on time, got our skates tied, played our game, and got home. But they managed to do it. I don't know how they did it, but they did do it. But that happens day in and day out, all winter long, and now, Mr. Speaker, throughout the summer and throughout the spring and into summer and fall, hockey has become no longer a sport of just one season, but a sport in many cases for young people all year round. The game has changed, but one thing that I believe remains consistent and constant is the fact the game, and I don't want to get into the debate of where the birthplace of hockey is, other than to say that the birthplace of hockey is Nova Scotia, in my mind. But the game has changed. It's a better game now, that I believe, than it was in the early days. But for me, Mr. Speaker, the real heroes are the people that I remember in the past who've been part of my hockey experience. And I speak about those people who have been coaches, Mr. Speaker. Harvey Lively coached me, I think, in my very first year of hockey. I see Harvey every day. He's somebody that I hold with great respect. I remember a coach, Paul McDade, who went on later to give me a job opportunity as I left high school. A gentleman by the name of Ron King, who's spent some time coaching in Sackville. I don't know if he ever played the game, but I know he coached the game, and he managed to coach me. A former school teacher of mine, Alvin McDonald, I know he's known by some across. Alvin was the junior high school hockey coach at Sackville Heights Junior High. I can tell you that he was a great coach, but I was petrified of Alvin McDonald. I was afraid to make a mistake. He was a hard coach, and when you made a mistake, he let you know. And I was thankful for the fact that I sat a lot of time on the bench, because I had less time to make mistakes and to be reminded of those mistakes. But I know a lot of people hold Alvin in great regard. A coach by the name of Bernie Bishop, who still plays hockey today, and I play summer hockey with Bernie. I remember having a conversation this summer when he was trying to give me some advice. And I said to Bernie, Bernie, you couldn't teach me that 40 years ago. What makes you think you can teach me that now? But Bernie has been and is a hockey legend in parts of Nova Scotia and has played all over the world. He's from Hants County, that's right, as the member opposite indicates. Bill McDonald, a former member of this House, a longtime coach and organizer at Sackville Minor Hockey, put a huge effort into making sure not only his sons had a place to play, but all the young people in Sackville had a place to play. John Doyle. John Doyle joins me on the board of directors of the Sackville Blazers, but he's been involved in hockey since I can remember. And I know John and my parents were original members of the Sackville Minor Hockey Executive. When Sackville Minor Hockey first started, people might not know this, but we didn't have a rink. We actually traveled. Our home rink initially was Windsor, and then we went to Brooklyn, and then we went to Shannon Park, and then we went to North End Rink, and then eventually Sackville built its first rink in the mid-1970s, built, I would add, by the community. There was no government money in that rink. It was built by fundraising efforts, and the carpentry work, the construction of that rink was built by members of the community and local companies that did the work. The rink still exists today, and it's the home of the Sackville Blazers. We now have another rink at the Sackville Sports Stadium. But in addition to people like John Doyle, there was Fred McGuinness and Freddie Grace. Fred McGuinness, for example, was the first person to sign me up as an official and help me work through my level 1, my level 2, and my level 3 officiating. And he was the referee assigner for Sackville Minor Hockey. And it was a great opportunity for me to make a little bit of money refereeing hockey games, get extra ice time, be involved in the game as a young person, and continue my path of being physically fit, or trying to be physically fit. A person that I'd like to mention right now is Darren Coster. We talked a little bit about the Halifax Citadels. Darren Coster was actually in the Speaker's Gallery during the introduction of this bill. Darren is the Executive Director of Hockey Nova Scotia. But what people may not be aware is that Darren Coster actually played nets for a short period of time for the Halifax Citadels. And Darren is a great hockey enthusiast. He played junior hockey, I believe, for Dartmouth, and for a number of clubs around, and is an excellent goaltender. Mr. Speaker, a lot of my hockey actually growing up was pond hockey. I enjoyed pond hockey. I still do to this day. It's where the heart of the game is, where instead of a net, you have two boots. You have young people that go out and they play from the minute they get out of school till dark. They understand that the rules aren't necessarily the same in pond hockey as they are in official game hockey, but they play for the fun of it, and I think that's where we need to remind our parents and our coaches from time to time that the game has to get back to the basics, the simple, the fun. Our community has had some tremendous successes of recently with respect to having our young people advance to competitive hockey. In 1 year, and I brought these young folks to the House a couple of years back, in 1 year we were blessed to have 4 young people from our community drafted into the NHL. And I speak of James Shepard, Brad Marchand, Andrew Bodnerchuk, and Ryan Hillier, all drafted into the NHL the same year from the same general area. In fact, 3 of these young people grew up on the same street or lived near each other for a short period of time. Well, there's some debate about where they played, but what I said, Mr. Speaker, was that they were from the same community. They're from the community that I represent, and I can tell you that They've all made their neighbors, their communities very, very proud, Mr. Speaker. The Glooby Cup, Mr. Speaker, I was asked to remind members about the Gloobies Cup. Mr. Speaker, I have the job as being the jersey manager. I look after the sweaters for the MLA's hockey team. It's an important job, Mr. Speaker. Those sweaters are hung up neatly in my garage right now, and I make sure from time to time when the MLAs are challenged to a hockey game, in my garage, yes, when the MLAs are challenged to a hockey game, that we get the jerseys out and we get as many MLAs as possible to go out to communities to play games. We haven't had a lot lately. I continue to remind members to sharpen their skates and to be involved, to make sure we get out there to be a competitive team. But I can tell you that the MLAs compete annually in the Glooby Cup. It's a small tournament that involves a team of judges, a team of Crown prosecutors, 2 teams of defense attorneys, the MLAs, and I believe there's another team. The MLAs have been successful holders of the Glooby Cup 2 out of the last three times. We pick up a few extra players to help us along the way, and my expectation is that our team this year will be successful again, although I understand that one of the Crown prosecutors may be playing for a different team. Frank Hoskins, who was a Crown prosecutor, is now a judge, so I suspect that he'll be playing for the judges. Might give the judges a little more ability to compete, but I would say this, the judges actually last year in the last Glooby Cup did very well. In fact, I believe they came 2nd or 3rd. They were undefeated going into the final game. Mr. Speaker, one of the great events that happens in Nova Scotia with respect to hockey, in addition to those great minor hockey tournaments like the Joe LaMontagne tournament and the Tassa tournament and the other tournaments, and there's lots of great tournaments, is an adult tournament that now I understand is the largest adult hockey tournament in the world. It's the Vince Ryan tournament. It's organized by a group of people led by a fellow by the name of Richie Warren, and it brings in hundreds of teams to Cape Breton to participate in adult hockey. I've had the good fortune to play in that tournament a few times. It's a great opportunity for people to get out there and be physically active, to enjoy each other's company, and to take advantage of great Cape Breton hospitality. As well, Mr. Speaker, I do still play hockey. I play 2 or 3 or 4 nights a week, depending on my schedule. I get the opportunity to play with some very interesting people. On Wednesday night, just Wednesday night gone by, I play in a league, and it's the team that I play for. It's called the Screaming Eagles. I happened to be lucky to get on that team, but I also found that I was one of the few people on that team that wasn't from Cape Breton. So although we're not the Cape Breton Screaming Eagles, we're the Sackville Screaming Eagles. I would say this, that a lot of the talent on that team comes from Cape Breton. We have people like Glenn McDougall and Dave Keys, both played high-level hockey. I think Glenn played hockey for St. F.X., in fact, and Dave Keys played major junior hockey in Ontario, and I don't know if it was Peterborough Petes or one of those teams. We have people like Victor Lansleeve and D.A. McNeil and Brian McCachran, all from Cape Breton, all now living here in Halifax, and all have come together to play the great game of hockey in the Sackville Arena. You know, the other thing that I really love about the game, and it's not just the game, it's the rinks, is those rink characters. And everybody who has an arena would have one of these rink characters. I think it's almost like an assignment. If you have a rink, you have a rink character. And I can tell you that those characters are people that make up the heart and soul of that community. And I think of people like in the New Waterford rink, Willie Cormier, for example. Willie Cormier is a fixture in that rink. He's there all the time. He's like the local comedian, the guy who meets you and greets you and looks after the people that come to watch the games. And I remember and know of, in the Windsor rink, there's a guy by the name of Sticks Arnold. I don't know what his real name is. I know him by Sticks Arnold. And Sticks is in that rink all the time. He's actually the equipment manager, I believe, for the Windsor Royals. And every rink has one of these types of characters. And you know what? They help build communities. And there are a lot of people in this province that have put a great effort into not only building communities, but building the rinks in their communities. And I think of the Berwick Arena as a prime example. And I know that people like George Moody, who was a former member of this House, puts a great deal of effort into raising money to build that new arena that they so well deserve. And people like Bobby Best. Bobby Best is loved by some and hated by others. He's a referee, and he has that ability to hold a game to check. And Bobby Best, though, is, in my mind, is best known for his work at the Berwick Apple Dome and the work that he's done to help raise money to build that new facility. Nova Scotia has been fortunate because we not only have exported into the NHL, into the professional ranks, good hockey players, but we've brought into the ranks great officials as well. And Bobby Best is one of those people that I believe officiated in the NHL. And I can tell you that others like Don Kowarski, he still officiates. Chuck Banfield officiated in the NHL for a long period of time. I know for short stints, I believe people like Randy Pulsiver officiated in the NHL and the AHL. Dave Stone, I believe as well, may have done so. It's our presence into that game, and I think there was a point in time where we had more people officiating in the NHL than actually playing in the NHL. And you know, that's an important part too. It's an important part of the game. Mr. Speaker, I remember as a young person, some of my earliest memories of hockey are going to the Halifax Forum and watching the Voyageurs. My father worked for Pepsi Cola, and Pepsi had some seats reserved next to the visitors' bench. And as a young person, I would go along with my father to those games and idolized those men that were out there playing that game. And I think that's what helped me to get the love for the sport of hockey. But you know, it really is, in my mind, about a whole community, a province, where we recognize the fact that it's important to be physically active, to play the game, to help build our character, to shape who we are and what we are as a province. And that's why I'm proud to support this bill that declares ice hockey the official sport of Nova Scotia. I can tell you that in Sackville, at Sackville Minor Hockey, literally thousands of kids, boys and girls, sign up every year to play hockey. Our high school programs are among the best in the province. I point to Millwood High School as a prime example. Millwood High School recently competed, I believe, in Cape Breton in a recent tournament, and ended up in the end defeating the high school from Glace Bay, and I think it was a 6-1 or 6-2 game to win that championship. But for a small high school to be able to compete so well at the provincial and even Atlantic level, I think it speaks to not only the love for the game, but the commitment by parents and the effort by the players to the game. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak a little bit about my proudest moment in hockey. I remember, and it wasn't as a player, it was as a coach. I remember I was coaching a Adam Host League hockey team, and it was about 15 years ago or so. We had a great team. We had lots of young people that were very enthusiastic, and I used to tell them the same thing before every game. I remember I had this little saying that I would start the year out with. I would say, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, and then I'd ask them to say the next verse, and the next verse is, it's how you play the game. But I would say, no, not in our team. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose until you lose, and then it matters. And I can tell you, I had kids, and still have kids today, that are now grown adults who come up to me and remind me of saying that to them week after week after week. But my proudest moment came when we had a young guy who was a heart and soul player. He was the last guy to arrive before the game started. He was always rushing to get his gear on, and everybody was helping him, and he was a heart and soul player, but he had very little talent. Our team was undefeated for the year. This young guy hadn't scored a goal or gotten an assist. No, it wasn't Bill Estabrooks. He hadn't scored a goal or gotten an assist. And before he arrived at the game, I sat down all of the other guys and I said, today's game isn't about winning. It's about getting Adam a goal. And those guys fed Adam the puck over and over and over again. At the end of the first period, I think we were down 3-0. At the end of the second period, I think we were down 4 or 5-1. And finally, about 2 minutes left to go in the game, Adam happened to be standing in front of the net where I told him to stand all the time, stick on the ice. Somebody fed him the puck. He got his goal. And he was the happiest kid on the team. 1 goal for 1 year, and that was the proudest moment. I was so proud of the team because they knew it wasn't about the win, it was about getting Adam a goal. And I don't know how he's done. I don't even know if I've seen him since then as a young person, but I know he had a lot of heart and soul, and I know that goal meant a lot to him. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, it meant a lot to me, but it meant more to those 10 other kids on the team who were focused on getting Adam a goal. Mr. Speaker, that's what hockey's all about. It's about the parents that drive their kids back and forth to the rink. It's about the managers and the people who are the unsung heroes that go and do the organizing. But most importantly, it's about the little kids like Adam, who gets a goal, who's able to celebrate that goal and celebrate the championship and the value of it with his teammates and go on to become an important part of our society, Mr. Speaker. So with that, I think it's absolutely appropriate that we declare Nova Scotia the official sport of Nova Scotia is ice hockey, and I'm proud and pleased to support the bill from the member of Hants West. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member for Timberlea Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is an important debate. I want to congratulate the member from Hants West. I'm concerned about the decorum during my comments, Mr. Speaker. Make sure you have this House under control for the next few moments as I speak, because I expect that there will be occasional interruptions, an occasional interruption which I would welcome. First of all, my congratulations. Bill 225 is something we are going to support, of course, in this caucus, and it's something that shows some foresight on the member's behalf as we celebrate hockey in Nova Scotia and the birthplace of hockey, uncontested, Windsor, Nova Scotia. My congratulations to that member opposite. I've got some questions for you, Mr. Speaker. I know where you were when Obama was elected president. I know where you were, okay? In fact, you shared that with me. And I know where I was when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. A terrible moment in an impressionable age in my young life at that time. I know where John F. Kennedy, when he was assassinated, that terrible, terrible, terrible afternoon. But where were you on May 10th, 1970, Mr. Speaker? Where were the members of this House on May 10th, 1970? And just like a history classroom, I see some hands going up opposite. May 10th, 1970, the greatest hockey player of all time, raced in, took a pass from Derek Sanderson, put it by Glenn Hall, and the Boston Bruins. And how are they doing? How are the Bruins doing? The Boston Bruins won the Stanley Cup. I know where I was on May 10th, 19... Now, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker? The member from Cape Breton Centre is beginning to cause me a problem. And if he does that, the member from Cape Breton Centre should be excused from this debate. If he cannot maintain proper decorum, he should not be in this legislature. Agreed, Mr. Speaker? Okay, thank you. Mr. Speaker, I want to, however, recognize the role of hockey that it played in my life, and I know that members opposite are aware of that. Mr. Speaker, I'm the proud son of a man who was in the New Brunswick and is in the New Brunswick Sports Hall of Fame. My father played hockey overseas, and last year, I know when we were sitting here, I received a wonderful photo that had been sent to me of my father playing for the Canadian national team during the Second World War, and he was wearing a Toronto Maple Leaf sweater at the time. Unfortunately, I want you to know that my father's favorite hockey team were the Detroit Red Wings, and his favorite hockey player was terrible Ted Lindsay. So let me tell the member from Cape Breton South that when my father played for the Sydney Millionaires after the war, he caused the occasional riot in Glace Bay. I was in Sydney a number of years ago with the member from Cape Breton Centre. We were talking to some people in the street corner, and this gentleman came over to me and said, "You are related to Dandy, are you not?" And I said, "Mr. Speaker," I said, "you're talking about my father." He said, "Yeah, the man who caused the riot in the Glace Bay Forum." My father was a hockey player, and let me tell you, I couldn't carry his skates. But he used to give me this lecture, and he used to tell me this: hockey will be my savior. It will keep me out of jail. And let me... Now, Mr. Speaker,
got time to go, Mr. Estabrook.
Mr. Speaker, I hear members opposite making comments. I hear the good member from beautiful Colchester, Musquodoboit Valley making comments. I welcome those comments. But the member from Cape Breton Centre has to be brought under control during this debate, and I again would like you to remind him of that. Mr. Speaker, do I have your assent to that? I'm aware of the fact, of course, of my role when it came to hockey with my dad, because at the time when I was a young teenager, we used to travel across the marsh to Amherst to watch the Amherst Ramblers play. And at that time, you got a feel for what senior hockey was about. Senior hockey was huge. On Saturday night at those games, we didn't stay home to watch the comedian, Don Cherry. Boston Bruins aside, he couldn't even count. He put the wrong players on at the wrong time. Mr. Cherry is a great hockey commentator, but he's not coach's corner. It should be the entertainment corner, let me assure you. But on Saturday night, where we grew up in Dorchester, in New Brunswick, we went to see the Ramblers play. And at that time, we had the opportunity to watch the Windsor Maple Leafs and some of the great hockey players that were, of course, locals, like Frank Bartow in particular, but other locals who came and played locally. Jimmy Backman, I can remember from the Windsor Maple Leafs. So we loved to have the Halifax Wolverines come to Amherst because we could beat them all up, right? We could always beat the Wolverines because they were from Halifax. And at that time, when in the Ramblers' days, there were some great hockey players. And I can remember the opportunity I had on a number of occasions to be in Amherst for various other reasons. Some of them I won't mention in this place at this time. And I would be pulled aside, particularly by members of the police force in Amherst, who also happened to be also were hockey players. And they would say to me on occasion, "Now, young man, we won't have to tell your father about this, but we want to remind you that Saturday night you're welcome back to watch the Ramblers play." Among those hockey players was a young man named Hartley Estabrooks, who had a tryout with the Bruins and returned to play senior hockey in the Maritimes, and another member of my family whose skates, let me assure you, I could not carry. People are always intrigued with why I'm a Boston Bruins fan.
Who carried your seats? Who cares? Who carried your seats?
Mr. Speaker, okay, well, I can't draw attention to the fact that I won't receive that heckling voice anymore, but I'm glad that you can draw attention to the fact of what hockey has meant to me personally. And let me assure you, Mr. Speaker, that when we were in those games, no matter where they were, no matter what part of the province or what part of the Maritimes you were in, people would come up to me, even now politically, come up to me and identify the fact that I am the son of Bill Dandy Estabrook Sr., okay? A lot better hockey player than I ever was, and Hartley, of course, is the same way when they remember that. But I want to tell you about why I'm a Boston Bruins fan. It's not a long story. It's not a long story. When the Bruins never made the playoffs, of course, they always barnstormed through the Maritimes. They always came with the 6 teams in the NHL at the time. Only 4 of them made the playoffs. So the Bruins would come to Nova Scotia, they'd come to New Brunswick, and they'd barnstorm around to make them some extra money. That's when I first saw Fleming McKell and Don Simmons and those gentlemen play hockey. They brought a great love to the game. McKell, of course, ended up back in the Maritime Senior League playing for the Glasgow Rangers. I correct me? The Glasgow Rangers, not the Bombers. And Fleming McKell, of course, added a great deal of senior hockey to this province. You know, Nova Scotia is known for some great hockey players, and the member from Hants West has brought them to our attention. We should remember, however, that a true hockey fan goes to see live hockey. I say to people all the time, "What are you doing Saturday night?" "Oh, Saturday night the Leafs are playing Phoenix." Like, sorry, who cares? But the Bay Ducks are playing the Sackville Blazers. That's a hockey game you go to see. That's a Junior B game you go to see. Go see the Mooseheads play. Go see university hockey played. Go see Junior B in the rink in St. Margaret's Centre, and you will see hockey highlights that you and your family can remember. That's what we should be remembering about hockey. The involvement, the commitment, the lessons that it's taught all of us. But it's important that we continue to support these young girls and these young guys who are playing hockey. And let me remind you, Mr. Speaker, that the Minor Hockey Association in my community is TASA Minor Hockey, the Timberley Amateur Sports Association Minor Hockey. There are a total of 23 young men in my community who wear on their background Bill MLA. That's what they wear on their back. Bill MLA. Nothing else. One young man in particular came into my office the other day and he said, you know, it was Halloween, so I thought I'd wear my hockey sweater to school. And let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, the abuse that Braden Stafford took that day in his own school about wearing his TASA Pee Wee AAA sweater. But his mother told him, that's okay, Braden. They're not making fun of you. They're making fun of the MLA. Now, Mr. Speaker, I have a few more comments to make. Nice to see that you're here, Mr. Speaker, because no reflection on the Deputy Speaker. But I've been bothered a number of times during my comments by certain members, and I draw your attention to the fact that the member from Cape Breton Centre has caused me angst without doubt. The member from Cape Breton Centre is in my very own caucus, but he's...
Good member.
He is a good member, Mr. Speaker, but he has poor taste in hockey teams, exceptionally poor taste in hockey teams. Mr. Speaker, I think we all should know, and I think the members opposite and other people present are going to speak about hockey and what it means to them personally. But let me tell you, aside from my father's influence, aside from the hockey that I played, and let me tell you, I played against the member from Waverley, Fall River, Beaverbank, and he was the original Inga Hammerstrom. He could go in the corner with 24 eggs and come out with the 24 eggs, none of them even touched, none of them even scrambled. And he was the prettiest guy on the ice because no one was allowed to touch him.
The honourable member for Bedford.
Mr. Speaker, more importantly, I do know that in the schools where I've taught school, and let's be clear in the fact that the Deputy Minister, the previous Deputy Minister of Education, when he first hired me as a teacher at Sir Johnny MacDonald, I was teaching at the time at Dorchester Penitentiary. I was teaching there, Mr. Speaker. I clarify that, okay. I was teaching at the time in Dorchester Penitentiary. And Lloyd Gillis, who was the Deputy Minister of Education a number of years ago, called and said to me at that job situation, I got lots of history teachers, I got lots of people with history degrees, I need a hockey coach. And I said, I'm just the man for that job. I can coach high school hockey. Never having coached high school hockey before, Mr. Speaker. In fact, only having the skates on a few times through university, because although the member from Bedford, or member from, Waverley, Fall River, Beaverbank, made some reaction to my football career, let me tell you, coaching hockey in high school was a great learning experience for me. And I can compliment the member from Sackville because I want you to know it's a wonderful event when you have the opportunity to run into some of your old players and your old students who come up and remember the tournament that you took them to or the game you won or lost, because that's, after all, the influence that we have in this country. Mr. Speaker, recently, of course, they were looking for new anthems for Hockey Night in Canada on CBC. You know, it was a big deal. It's a big event to make sure that that event, and TSN, of course, says that what we consider Canada's second anthem in this country, of course, is the theme to Hockey Night in Canada. Hockey is a big part of the tradition of this country. It's a big part of what happens in this country because of the influence of our fathers and our mothers, of course, who drove us to the rink and make sure that our gear was in the right order. But never wash the gear, Mum. Never touch the gear. Now, the member from Cape Breton Centre has heard this story, so I should make it at least important in this time. Mr. Speaker, in my senior year in high school, the team I played on won the New Brunswick High School Hockey Championship. It was an important event in my life. I was the captain of the team, Mr. Speaker, and I don't want an interruption, and I don't want to laugh. I was picked for other abilities as opposed to my hockey ability, I suppose. We won the hockey championship. I came, Mr. Speaker? Did you hear that comment? Hansard will just say interruption, but I heard that comment. I take that personally. That's not a compliment. That's an insult. Mr. Speaker, I'm trying to maintain my train of thought here. This is an important event in my life. I'm in grade 12. I come home. We've won the New Brunswick High School Hockey Championship. It's a little late at night, and we've been celebrating. Now, Mr. Speaker, I won't go into many of the details, but as I crept into the house that night with my hockey gear left outside in the snowbank, as I was creeping in front of the television, lo and behold, I realized the television was on. And my father was sitting there watching whatever event was on TV. The member from Cape Breton Centre is aware of the story with a few details I'm going to repeat publicly. That particular night, after winning the New Brunswick High School Hockey Championship, I spent the night in the woodshed on the Tantramar Marshes. Now, that was an important lesson in my life. You can win or lose, but don't hit the booze. A lesson my father never, ever forgot to remind me of time after time after time. So the members opposite and the members of our caucus, we are aware of what hockey means to us, the recognition it means for this province, and this is a bill that we're looking forward to supporting as it moves on. I look forward to hearing sharing the comments of other members. Thank you, member from Hants West, for bringing this bill forward.
Thank you. The Honourable member for Pictou Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a privilege and a pleasure to stand here and talk about this particular bill. And one of the main reasons why I'm standing here is there's been very little talking about this bill this evening. So I thought it would only be fair to pass on along a few words. It's certainly a tremendous sport, and we have a lot of talent across this province, as indicated by many of the members that have been talking. And certainly Pictou County have its share of the province's talent pool. And in fact, the Stanley Cup has visited New Glasgow with two local players in recent years. John Sim with the Dallas Stars, who's presently with the New York Islanders, and Colin Wade of the New Jersey Devils. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention someone across the county lines, someone that I know and played competitive fastball against, Paul McLean, the assistant coach of the Detroit Red Wings, defending Cup champions. And in fact, Paul had a very lengthy, productive career. In fact, when he was with Winnipeg, he was on a line with Dale Howardchuk, and in Detroit with Steve Yzerman. Also, a name that comes to my mind in the New Glasgow area is Derek Walser, a talented, high-scoring defenseman. In fact, he shattered the Quebec Major Junior League scoring championship a number of years ago. Last year, he played with the Toronto Marlies, and he's playing now in the Russian Elite League. He also had other European experience where he played over in Germany. So, and that's along with stints with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Earlier today, the member from Pictou West mentioned Joey McDonald, a goaltender for the New York Islanders. I can remember back in Adam when Joey was a goaltender playing for the Pictou Adam Club, and he was instrumental in practically winning most of their games, standing on his head at times. And he had an outstanding career so far with the Red Wing American Hockey League franchise, and now he's with the Islanders. Another outstanding Pictou County player, a player with roots from Thorburn, a player by the name of Lowell McDonald. And this was a time when there was only where the member mentioned that he played against him. Lowell McDonald made the National Hockey League when there was only 6 teams. And also, he was the winner of the Bill Masterton Trophy for the NHL's most gentleman player. His son Lane went on to play for Harvard University. In fact, he was the captain of Harvard University. Mr. Speaker, senior hockey was very popular in Pictou County, especially during the early 1960s. There's teams in the league at that time: Amherst Ramblers, Moncton Hawks, Windsor Maple Leafs, to mention a few. And as members talked tonight, they certainly brought back a lot of memories for me with a lot of the names from talented senior hockey players that played during that time. Some with previous professional experience, and others making their mark, climbing up the professional ranks. Member from Timberlea Prospect mentioned Fleming McCall. Back in 1963, Fleming McCall was brought in to be the playing coach, and in fact, the former Premier John Hamm, who was the president of the New Glasgow Ranger senior team, was instrumental in bringing in Fleming McCall in. And he had just finished a career with the what's that team now? Toronto Maple Leafs and Boston Bruins, and certainly one of the better players in the National Hockey League when he played, and certainly it was a pleasure to watch Fleming McCall play at the New Glasgow Stadium. He was definitely heads above everyone else. Very talented player who returned to Pictou County in this past year for a reunion of some of the former hockey players from the 1960s. Also on that local senior hockey team, we had players, very gifted players like Nelson Wilson, Ralphie Cameron, Jim McNeil, pound for pound, probably one of the toughest players that ever played in the league. The Young brothers, Johnny and Stewie, Frankie McDonald, even Huey Matheson from Brookfield came over and played with the New Glasgow Rangers, and goaltender Phil Buber. They used to, Mr. Speaker, fill the rink to see these senior stars like Jock Soulard, Simon Nolay, goaltender from Moncton Hawks, Don Lairn. Mr. Speaker, once again, very pleased that this bill came forward. I've been involved with sports all my life. I've coached hockey for over 30 years at every level, from novice to midget to high school hockey. Mr. Speaker, in fact, all 6 children of mine have played hockey, Mr. Speaker, 3 boys and 3 girls at all the levels. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I can remember some Saturdays a few years ago having a piece of loose leaf in the rink, wondering what rink should I go to next, because at times I had at one time five playing, Mr. Speaker, 4 on traveling teams and 1 playing on a local novice team. And one thing we can say is the hockey parents were always there to help out other parents as far as getting your kids around, getting your kids to a rink. Because I can remember sometimes I had 1 playing in Sydney, 1 down in Kentville, 1 over in PEI, 1 in Halifax, and 1 at home. So certainly, Mr. Speaker, it was very nice to be able to depend on some of these great hockey parents, mums and dads, to help out. Female hockey, well, maybe I'll mention the honourable member there from the beautiful Colchester Musquodoboit Valley asked me to just mention a few words about female hockey, Mr. Speaker. A couple of my youngest daughter, Mr. Speaker, who's in grade 11 at the moment, is playing high school hockey. But if I jump up the line a little bit, Mr. Speaker, my oldest daughter, Tara, played through the ranks, and when she came in to started playing hockey at the age of 6, Mr. Speaker, it was somewhat difficult at the time because there was no female teams around, and she was playing on boys' team, which I thought was great. In fact, played against the son of the member from Antigonish many games and became friends. But Mr. Speaker, because of the level of hockey, I think it definitely was advantageous for some of the females at that time, because as she went up the ranks, Mr. Speaker, she, because of her love and dedication for the game, she ended up being on maritime team that played down in the States, Mr. Speaker, at a major tournament, a Boston tournament. And at that particular time, there's many scouts from the Ivy League teams that were scouting there, and she was picked up by Harvard University, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, she went on to a very successful 4-year career from 1997 to 2001 with Harvard University, and she was picked as one of the top 3 players in her final senior year with the Harvard team. A lot of players that she played with played in Team USA, Team Canada. Mr. Speaker, I can remember many days leaving school at 4 o'clock on a Friday, driving straight through to Boston in order to see her play against teams like Princeton, Cornell, Yale, Brown, Boston College, New Hampshire, Boston University. Mr. Speaker, the game would be Saturday evening. Would wake up Sunday morning, Mr. Speaker, hit the road, come back home again. 11 or 12-hour trip. In fact, Mr. Speaker, a couple times I stayed for the Sunday game, which probably wasn't a wise decision, but I did, and saw a second game. And by the time the second game was over, it would be about 7 o'clock Sunday evening, and I would hit the road because I had to be back in the office at school the next day, and I would arrive in New Glasgow, Pictou County, 6:30 in the morning, and I was driving a good car there, remember? But anyway, they were great days, fond memories, and it was a lot of fun. Also, Mr. Speaker, another daughter, Ashley, she went up through the ranks, played high school hockey with the boys, same as my daughter Tara. And she went on to play hockey for Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. And also following that, during her law degree, she played for the UNB team, Mr. Speaker. But again, I want to support the bill brought forth there by our member. I believe it was Bill 125, and it's the official sport. Hockey is the official sport of Nova Scotia, and we certainly have a great love for this sport right across the country, and in particular in Nova Scotia. We even have members, Mr. Speaker, member beside me from Guysborough, Sheet Harbour, who played for the Heatherton Warriors, Mr. Speaker. And certainly, anyway, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to close here, and in fact, I'll leave you with a very quick story, Mr. Speaker, if I may. A story that I shared with some of my friends here earlier this afternoon when other members were speaking. Fleming McKell, Mr. Speaker, who played in the early 1960s in the Maritime Senior Hockey League, gave my brother 2 tickets for the 1965 final 7th game of the Stanley Cup in Montreal between the Blackhawks and the Habs, Mr. Speaker. I can remember that game, waiting for it. Watch it on TV, Mr. Speaker. That particular game, Mr. Speaker, the coach of the Montreal team had to make a choice who was going to play next, Charlie Hodge or Gump Worsley. And the reason why is that Gumper was injured earlier in the finals, but it was a good choice, Mr. Speaker. Gump Worsley was put in nets. He shut out the Blackhawks 4-0. No mask on, Mr. Speaker. John Beliveau scored, Mr. Speaker. 14 seconds into the game, John Beliveau scored, Mr. Speaker. Van Cornway and Savard, I believe, was the third of the 4 goals, Mr. Speaker. And the last comment, Mr. Speaker, is 1965 was the first year that the Conn Smythe Trophy was awarded for the MVP of the playoffs, and it was awarded to number 4, John Beliveau. Anyway, once again, I want to support the bill here, and have enjoyed listening to the dialogue on both sides. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable, the member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I will also make a note that the member from Cape Breton Centre is going to do some heckling. And who I thought was my honourable colleague from Timberley Prospect. Mr. Speaker, I guess I want to rise, obviously, to point out just exactly how important this bill is. I mean, we've heard the many senior members in this House about how important their memories of hockey has been in their lives. Now, I know there's some other colleagues that the Premier, the member from Richmond, the Minister of Health is around the age that category that I fall into, and I too have memories. But for those out there listening that want to talk about the 70s hockey and the 80s, when hockey meant the most to us, that's why I stand today in my place, Mr. Speaker. Now, you've heard early on in the banter that I was not a hockey player. Well, Mr. Speaker, that was not by choice. I always wanted to be a goaltender. I always wanted to be Mike Palmateer or Mike Liu, okay, 6'3", but my father saw another avenue for me. The day he put a baseball in my hand, he realized that there was no need for me to get injured on the ice, stick to baseball. And that's why I became a baseball player. However, Mr. Speaker, the memories are fond. And the early recollections that I have as a young person around hockey is going to your neighbors. I remember the brown stubby beer bottles at my neighbor's house, and my parents enjoying the Canada Cups, and kids running around watching hockey on TV. We've got a rich history in this province and in this country. The member from Hants West brought this bill forward, and I was speaking to him earlier outside the chambers. We were wondering why this wasn't brought forward earlier, when we have, as we've heard earlier, such memories of the great hockey players and the great memories that the members have shared earlier. Sports in general, Mr. Speaker, is a wonderful tool that teaches children, that teaches young people discipline, teamwork, citizenship. That's what not just hockey, but any sport does. I recently had the opportunity to meet with Alan McDonald and his staff over at the Maritime Hockey Academy in Burnside. I had the opportunity to meet 22 young individuals, both young men and young women, who are endeavoring into the career of hockey. This is a wonderful opportunity for them to learn, not just and get their education, but also to play hockey and to excel, Mr. Speaker. And that's the evolution. That's where we've come. We actually have private hockey academies setting up to allow children to believe that they can achieve a goal. And it's from memories of the past, memories that their parents have shared with them, memories that they have watching young people like, I know the Honourable Leader from Cole Harbour would be remiss if I didn't mention Sidney Crosby. These are memories that our young people have as well, that we've heard some of the most fortunate recent players made mention in this House that have gone on to success. What has hockey actually really achieved? Hockey in this province, to me, what it means to me, what baseball has meant to me is a young man travels on, he gets to that level where he's playing competitive, and his mom and dad is taking him around the province to play the game of hockey. And on that ride, they're building that relationship, that family bond, whether it be with their mother or with their father. A young boy becomes a young man. Hockey brings families together. It also brings communities together. And we heard made mention tonight by several members about the rinks and the different communities in this province. And just as baseball, I know hockey's the same. When you go into another town, you fight getting in and you fight getting out. But that's the real love of the game. And some of us are lucky enough to end up with our teeth fully in place, unlike my honourable colleague from Timberley Prospect.
That's not fair, Mr. Speaker. You can't say something fair. That's not fair.
Mr. Speaker.
He lost his teeth when he tripped over places.
Mr. Speaker, I was very pleased to see my colleague make mention of Joey McDonald today. I am very proud to proclaim that I'm a New York Islander fan. And that lineage goes back to 79-80 when Glenn Chico Resch was my hero. And I had a little Kmart glove that I used to play road hockey with, and I played nets. And those were the memories that I had. And at one point, we did win 4 consecutive cups. And yes, I've suffered. But as the honourable colleague that brought this bill forward openly admitted that he was a longtime Leafs fan, I feel your pain. However, better days are coming. As a young man, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure many members in this House have had the privilege of collecting cards. It was one of my hobbies. I used to actually, in elementary school, sell my lunch. My mother packed a wonderful lunch, and I'd get 50 cents for a sandwich, 50 cents for the little mini sips, $1 for a Joe Louis. And at the end of the week, I'd go to the local corner store, and I'd buy hockey cards. And at the following week, I'd go to school, and we'd play that game where we throw the cards against the wall. We'd call it flick or tops, and we'd compete for the cards. And that didn't last very long, because we realized the value of hockey cards. And I can tell you today that I'm very pleased to say that I've got an attic full of suitcases that are full of hockey cards that are of great value. A lot of ground hockey. But the best part of winter, I was never a skier, Mr. Speaker, but it was when the first ice formed on the lake. The whole community comes together and they make for the ice. And there's nothing better, and I know the honourable member, the Honourable Minister of Health Promotion Protection made mention that when you're playing pond hockey, there's no rules. It's about getting out there and enjoying it, getting in the fresh air, playing hard, and coming together. Early on, I had made mention about the more senior members and their memories. Well, as young men, we grow up, young women, we grow up, and we want to play professional. But when that goal isn't achieved, hockey has progressed to give us another place. And when the first 35 and over leagues began, or what we call gentlemen's hockey, it allowed us to dream again. And that's when I began to really play ice hockey, Mr. Speaker. It gave me a second chance to actually play. Now, I wasn't the best player. I was gangly. I wore a size 13 skate so I could stop a puck playing defense. You couldn't get by me. But what I looked forward most to was the competition, the camaraderie, and the cold beer afterwards, because the cold in the rink opened up. I was 35, over 35. That's the real crux of why this bill is so important, is the memories that it holds for all of us and the future memories that our young people today are in envy and work towards. And with those, Mr. Speaker, I'll take my place.
The Honourable, thank you very much. The Honourable, the member for Kings West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I've been trying to get to my feet here now on a couple of occasions, but this is a bill that I think many members have wanted to speak to. I want to first congratulate the member from Hants West for bringing this forward. He comes, of course, from what we call the cradle of hockey, not just in Nova Scotia, but perhaps the birthplace in Canada. I'm sure every member of this House can speak here and ravel many stories around their own hockey or people they've associated with in their communities, or people at the NHL level that they've admired or been their heroes through the years. But growing up, actually, I had an early connection with Nova Scotia hockey, actually growing up in central Newfoundland. And because a number of players from Nova Scotia would come over, get a job in the mill or with the mining companies, and then play hockey during the winter months. And I know when I bring up names like Jock Allard, Danky Dorrington, Globey Collins, Frank Finlayson, Huey Wadden, these were Jim Beckman. These were people who came to Newfoundland for a few years or a lot of years to play hockey. And also playing high school hockey. I had a coach by the name of Joe Byrne from Belle Island, Newfoundland, who was a scout for the Detroit Red Wings, and he was well ahead of his time, because in those days you didn't go on the ice till about November. Hockey season was November to maybe a little bit of March, and he would have us running and working out practically in the first week of school to prepare for the hockey season. So I did enjoy a fine high school hockey career. But also at that time, I grew up actually in a community that didn't have an arena. So it was on the ponds and on the river, the Exploits River, that I played hockey. One of the people I played hockey with and against was Alex Faulkner. And so I'm really dating myself now, but he played for the Detroit Red Wings. And he brought to my little community of Bishops Falls players like Gordie Howe, Ted Lindsay, Terry Sodchuk, members of the Detroit Red Wings that would come down on a fishing trip, and then they would have some kind of an event in the community around them. So from Newfoundland, I went to St. F.X. And at St. F.X., Pierre Pagé was one of the stars of that era. But when I was at St. F.X., again, the folklore around the hockey team for years, and Father Keogh, you'll learn those stories. They become part as well of who you are. You go out to the games, and at that time I saw just what a great level of hockey, university hockey was and is today. I mean, if you want a great evening at an arena at Acadia or St. F.X. or St. Mary's, there's no question it's the best, probably the best game in town. But I just wanted to give a little bit of a tribute to one of my professors when I was at Acadia, And I know this is a man that a number of people here in the arena, in the legislature or in the arenas of hockey know as well, and that's Don Wells. Don Wells coached for about 20 years at Acadia. And last year they had a real nice event for Don as he was battling cancer and is doing pretty well. But when I was at Acadia, Don was my coaching foundations professor. And when I was taking the course, he said, you know, I know you all have a busy year, but if you have an opportunity to go down to the arena and help out with a team, that's one of the great ways to learn the coaching methods and the principles of sport that we're trying to teach here at Acadia. And so I was living in Kentville, great hockey town. Kentville is a long tradition. In fact, Kentville, and many members may not know this and realize this, but they had the very first summer hockey school. The very first summer hockey school. And when they put the ice in on those hot days in August, they'd have to get the fire department to spray down the rink to try to keep it cool and to be able to keep the refrigeration unit going. And we're talking about the first hockey school in Canada that was in Kentville. And then the Montreal Canadiens came there for a number of years and actually held their training camp. So this was even before the modern era of teams coming here. But I went down to the rink in Kentville, and there were 4 teams in the Adam division, one without a coach. And I decided in my year of education that I would coach that team. And it was one of the best learning experiences that I had, and I owe Don Wells for that, and especially since coaching went on to be a big part of my teaching career as well, and ended up coaching about 30 teams along the way. The couple of the communities, of course, in the Valley that are part of my constituency now also have tremendous hockey histories. Berwick and Greenwood. And the member from Timberley Prospect, I'm sure, knows that Berwick also have that wonderful name. All the teams out of Berwick are the Berwick Bruins. And they were also, again, a minor hockey organization that also, of course, had many success stories with players. When I first went to West Kings to teach, Greenwood minor hockey was one of the minor hockey systems well known across Nova Scotia in those early years in the 70s. They actually won provincial titles at Bantam A and Bantam B level. And the goaltender, one of the goaltenders on the Bantam team, the Bantam A team, went on to the NHL, a player by the name of Kenny Riggett, and played for his career in Toronto and in Philadelphia. So we all have our stories associated with prominent players, players we've played with. But I would just wanted to I guess end by saying that it's great to see that our minor hockey systems are still strong, and it's really parents and coaches and a role that government will often play as well through, like the Office of Health Promotion and Protection, to be able to assist with arenas, their construction or their renovation projects. So we do have that role. In terms of the future of minor hockey, there is that concern that it is pricing itself out of the market for many young children. And as one of the members opposite also said, it's such a sport to teach discipline, to teach teamwork, and the goals of good citizenship. And that should be some of the primary part of what sport is all about. But I do worry that young boys and girls are finding the game too expensive. And I know, as the member opposite from Timberley Prospect said, hockey was a way of keeping him out of trouble. And they're out of jail. Oh, I didn't know he went as far as jail. But anyway, but it has kept many people off the off the streets, and gave them a purpose, gave them a goal, and a true education from good coaches as well along the way. So, you know, rather than have GM places and Air Canada place and so on, maybe these corporations could have some money come down into minor hockey, so that boys and girls could pick up the game in strong numbers, perhaps not like we historically had, because families are much smaller, but going down to the rink, or even we still see many communities and a place like Plaster Rock in New Brunswick, where the Prime Minister went last year to attend what is the World Championship of Pond Hockey. Those are the things that I think we need to cultivate in our province and in our community. And hopefully this bill will bring some of that, both scrutiny of the game, but also a celebration of a sport that's very prominent in all of our communities. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
For Hants East. Try one. There.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I can see by those, controlling the microphone there and all, that I would stand and speak on hockey. I never was a hockey player, Mr. Speaker. I did play at it as a child. I want to say that at a very early age, it became quite evident that I was more of an obstacle on the ice than a benefit to any team, and so I tried to remove myself from any slippery slope where I might find myself. I want to thank my leader for his interjections. I do want to say a few comments on this bill. For, I guess, several reasons. One is the member from Hants West that introduced it, and him and I share Hants County, and I feel some obligation to promote this piece of legislation. I want to say that some years ago there was an opportunity offered by the combination of departments of agriculture and tourism to take people around to some of the farming operations, in particular those roadside stands and so on, started in Hants East, I believe, and went down through the valley. It was a couple of days, but on that trip, the bus stopped at Howard Dill's in Windsor, and Howard Dill had mentioned to me about Long Pond and the origin of hockey, and I related to him that even though I wasn't a hockey player, my wife's family were pretty avid hockey players, and actually my wife's grandfather was Tiger Mackey from Port Hawkesbury, and anybody who is familiar with the Straight Pirates, especially the old timers, would have been familiar with Tiger Mackey. Tiger started playing hockey, well, probably at a very early age, but at 15, he played for the Charlottetown Silver Foxes, Mr. Speaker, and they were maritime junior champs. In 1935, he was invited to the Boston Bruins training camp and offered an NHL contract. But he didn't take them up on it for health reasons. He played for the Boston Orioles and got traded to Pittsburgh, to the Pittsburgh Yellow Jackets of the Eastern Amateur League. In 1936, his contract was bought by the Detroit Red Wings, and he played for their farm team, the Detroit Pontiacs. In 1939, he played for the Quebec Aces. In 1940, he moved to Glace Bay and played for the Glace Bay Miners for 2 years. And after that, he moved to New Glasgow and played for various teams in Pictou County. Lived there for several years, actually. I think worked at the pulp mill there as a welder. He played for the Old Timers in Stephenville, Newfoundland, when he worked there for a short time. And in 1960, he moved to Port Hawkesbury and was active in hockey, coaching and playing for the Old Timers. And that was where I met Tiger Mackey, very active in the hockey scene in Port Hawkesbury and playing for the Straight Pirates, Old Timers. And Tiger played till he was 85 years of age, and Wayne Ronstadt actually did a story on him on the road again. And I got to say, on that show, he showed that he could hold a broom and jump through it, and he was 80 years of age, and I'm 52, and I don't think I could do it today. And so he was a tremendous athlete. And when we think about the impacts of hockey on young people and what it has meant to communities in this province, it is significant, and I have to applaud the member for his piece of legislation. The other day we talked about a bill introduced here for the East Hants Sportsplex, and I guess 3 members of the Conservative government spoke in support of that legislation. But I want to say that in Hants East, hockey is a big item. And there are probably too many people to mention as far as their impacts on hockey. And I see the Minister of Agriculture there nodding, because he would have played hockey in the old Lance rink for sure. Not that I was there to watch necessarily, but I sure heard the stories. And but I do want to mention one individual from East Hants who I would say deserves mention when I talk about hockey in this province, and that's Keith Miller from Lance. Keith has been a fountain of energy, I would say, a tremendous advocate for hockey in our local area. And there's a man in his 80s now, still very active. Tremendous good health for him that he's able to do this. But I'm amazed at the contribution he still makes to the Sportsplex Arena Association. It's just his board, the board that he is a member. Really have an asset in having him there. Members, I think, would know. I know my leader would want to argue this point. I know Cole Harbour is the home of Sidney Crosby, but Enfield can take some claim for that. That he lives in Enfield, and or I should say, at least I think he does. He did. I heard somebody mention they saw Maclean's article, Maclean's magazine article, where he was selling his home. So perhaps he doesn't live there anymore. But I know the community was very proud and pleased to have Sidney Crosby as a citizen there. I have to say, setting aside what great talent great talent Sidney Crosby has, for anybody who has watched him interviewed or on any newscast, certainly an articulate, well-spoken young man. I think any community would be proud to have, and not to mention what a great ambassador for the province and for the country with his hockey talent. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few comments, I want to say how much I'm glad to see the member bring forward this legislation. I think Nova Scotians would be proud to endorse it, and I know in my area there are many families for whom hockey is the biggest deal that they have for enjoyment of getting out together and quality time and health promotion. and it's something that we certainly know that into old age you can still do it. Be more careful, but it certainly provides a good social context and a good health context for people. So with that, I look forward to the bill moving through the House. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Thank you. If I recognize the member for Hants West, it'll be to close debate.
Thank
the Honourable member for Hants West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to take just a minute to thank all the honourable members who spoke today on this bill. It's been passionately speaking about their personal experiences, many names coming forward, and that's exactly what this bill was about. So that Nova Scotians will remember what a great sport hockey is, what it's done for this province and the people that live in it, and the many memories of days gone by and the days yet to come. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to move second reading of Bill 225.
The motion before the House is for second reading of Bill 225, the Provincial Sport Act. Are you ready for the question? All those in favour signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? The motion is carried. Bill 225, entitled an act for ice hockey to be the provincial sport of Nova Scotia. Order that this bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to request the consent of the House to revert the order of business to presenting reports of committees.
Is it agreed? Agreed. The Honourable the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. As Chairman of the Committee on Law Amendments, I'm directed to report that the committee has met and considered the following bills. Bill number 187, an act to make mandatory the reporting of child pornography. Bill number 199, an act to amend Chapter 40 of the Acts of 2005, the Enforcement of Court Orders Act. Bill number 210, an act to amend Chapter 1 of the Acts of 1995-96, the Education Act. Bill number 217, an act to amend Chapter 11 of the Acts of 1992, the Utility and Review Board Act. The committee recommends these bills to the favourable consideration of the House without amendments.
The report is tabled. The bills be reverted to the Committee of the Whole House. The Honourable the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'd now look for the consent of the House to resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole House on bills.
Is it agreed?
Agreed.
The Honourable the Government House Leader. The Honourable the Government House Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I move that you do now leave the chair and the House can resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole House on bills.
Do we have the bills? Okay. Order, please. The Committee of the Whole House on Bills is called to order. The Honourable the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Would you please call Bill number 187?
Bill number 187.
No amendments.
No amendments. Any interveners? Shall the clause carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. The Honourable the Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you please call Bill number 199, an act to amend Chapter 40 of the Acts of 2005,
Bill
the
number
Enforcement
one.
of Court Orders Act.
Bill number 199.
No amendments.
No amendments. Any interveners? Shall the clause carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Thank you. The Honourable, the Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Chair, would you please call Bill number 210, an act to amend Chapter 1 of the Acts of 1995-96, the Education Act?
Bill number 210.
No amendments.
No amendments. Any interveners? Shall the clause carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Thank you. The Honourable, the Deputy Government House Leader.
Please call Bill number 217, an act to amend Chapter 11 of the Acts of 1992, the Utility and Review Board Act.
Bill number 217.
Unamended.
Unamended. Any interveners? Shall the clause carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Thank you. The Honourable, the Deputy Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would move that you now do rise and the committee report progress.
Thank you.
The Chairman of the Committee of the Whole House on Bills reports.
Committee's met and considered 4 bills, 187, 199, 210, and 217. Chairman's been instructed to recommend them to favorable consideration of the House, each without amendment.
Ordered that these bills be read for a third time on a future day. The Honourable, the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And again, I would ask for the consent of the House to revert the order of business back to reports of committees.
Is it agreed? Agreed. All those in favour signify by saying aye. Against? The Honourable, the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As Chairman of the Committee on Law Amendments, I'm directed to report that the committee has met and considered the following bills. Bill number 78, an act to amend Chapter 23 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Assessment Act. Bill number 93, an act to amend Chapter 293 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Motor Vehicle Act. Bill number 158, an act to amend Chapter 4 of the Acts of 1994-95, the Gaming Control Act. Bill number 189, an act respecting a Memorial Day to honor minors. Bill number 194, an act to amend Chapter 334 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Partnership Act. Bill number 207, an act to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the first controlled flight in Canada by the Silver Dart in Nova Scotia. The committee recommends these bills to the favorable consideration of the House with certain amendments.
The report is tabled. Ordered that these bills be referred to the Committee and the Whole House on Bills. The Honourable, the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And continuing with reports of committees, Mr. Speaker, as Chairman of the Committee on Law Amendments, I'm directed to report that the committee has met and considered the following bills. Bill number 211, an act to ensure fair registration practices by regulating bodies. Bill number 212, an act to protect the deposits of purchasers of newly built residential units. The committee recommends these bills to the favorable consideration of the House without amendments.
The report is tabled. Order that these bills be referred to the Committee of the Whole House on Bills. The Honourable, the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I now ask for the consent of the House to consider government business public bills for third reading.
Is it agreed? Agreed. The Honourable, the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, would you please call Bill number 187, please?
Bill number 187. The Honourable, the Minister of Justice.
very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to rise and to move third reading of Bill number 187, the Child Pornography Reporting Act. Mr. Speaker, as we've known from the debate in the House and subsequent processes of moving through law amendments, there's been a number of intersections associated with this, but also in the course of that, I want to thank my honourable colleagues in the House that have provided their commentary, the questions and some of the concerns they've raised, but I also want to say a special thank you to the policing community and other justice partners that have been supportive of this bill. And Mr. Speaker, I know that we all have at the core of our hearts to make sure that we can protect any child and save them from the abuse of child pornography and its impact. As one of the police officers today said in law amendments, that if this act stops one pedophile, if this act can protect one child, then it's been worthwhile. And throughout the process, there have been some questions about what the impact of this legislation, if it was not there, or the call for it. And there is almost a question that is unanswerable in the sense of how many times would this have been reported, because it's hypothetical in the sense of without it, you'll never know until others can use it another day and hopefully will. And I've been very pleased that CyberTip has been supportive of this, the national organization to deal with the reporting of child pornography, that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police have added their voice to it, and as well that the associations of chiefs of police for Nova Scotia have added their support for this. Also was indicated that we've added policing positions under our 250 policing complement that we've been rolling out across the province. As was noted by Deputy Chief Miles Burke today in law amendments, one of their requests will be to add a policing position for an ICE unit, and I know that the acting chief will provide us with that direction as they look to do other things. As he indicated, their first priority in that particular area was dealing with the impact of drugs on our community and especially on our youth. But Mr. Speaker, I can say that as we go forward and we've added positions, we have the joint service initiative for the province and the ICE unit. We also have a joint initiative between the Halifax Regional Police and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. All of this is about there is no one solution. The sheer volume and the vastness of the internet and people's access to images is such that it takes a concerted effort over time. And with that, Mr. Speaker, again, I want to thank my colleagues and look forward to the continued debate, and have been very pleased and proud to move third reading.
The Honourable the Member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, law amendments always presents us with a wonderful opportunity, and if you're not a member of that committee, I urge you to make a point of either getting at the table or at least coming to sit in the audience. I have the opportunity to serve on law amendments now since I was first elected, and today we had the opportunity to listen to an RCMP officer. I was particularly intrigued with Miles Burke. It was great to see Mr. Burke there, the acting chief of the CBRM police. And I was the one who asked the question to Mr. Burke at the time, listen, I understand this is a very well-intentioned bill, but are the dollars in place to follow up with the details? It was Mr. Burke who then, Chief Burke, acting Chief Burke, if I'm correct, Mr. Speaker, who replied that would be one of his first requests. We've heard time after time after time about the more boots in the street, 500 boots in total, 2 boots per officer by the sounds of things. Well, here's a request again for the ICE unit. The dollars follow the request. Put teeth in this legislation. Perhaps it will work. Perhaps, time will tell, but it's still problematic from my perspective. And I put this on the record for all to see, that when I quote from the Sunday, November the 2nd, 2008, child porn comment in the editorial in the Herald, political posturing is the only point in bringing in a law that will seldom result in prosecutions. Time will tell if this bill is going to work, if the charges, there you go, thank you, if the charges are going to stick and the convictions are going to follow. We have a good piece of legislation. The window dressing aside, it's something that we look forward to supporting. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm just rising on behalf of our Justice critic, the member from Richmond, to first of all congratulate the Minister of Justice for bringing this bill forward. It's a bill that the mandatory reporting of child pornography is certainly something that that will have the effect, I believe, in this province of making the lives of our children safer, and anything that will do that will certainly receive the support of our party. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the Minister. It will be to close debate. The Honourable the Minister of Justice.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I do want to thank my honourable colleagues, and I do know that with both Superintendent Roper from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and with Acting Chief Miles Burke, that they work with a great dedicated group of individuals, and that anything we can do through our efforts to support them, that we're going to continue to do that, Mr. Speaker. And I just would reiterate again a very disturbing topic, that when people say, and have kind of said in terms of one of the media editorials, that this is a bill without bite. Well, I can tell you what really hurts is the knowledge, Mr. Speaker, that in the 2007 report, a national survey that indicated over 5,000 active accounts in this province, that has a lot of sting. And that is something that is driving us to do that. That's why it's part of a pan-Canadian effort amongst justice ministers in the country to address this. And I do recognize, in closing this debate, the province of Manitoba, Mr. Speaker, that has led the way with this, and also in Ontario, that are working on this. And so what we're doing here is part of a national effort. And I also hope, Mr. Speaker, that our legislation will be potentially short-lived, because the Parliament of Canada is scheduled to look at this and to have national legislation that indeed will give us the bite to deal with those that are breaking the law. So I'm very proud and pleased to close debate.
The motion is for the third reading of Bill number 187, the Child Pornography Reporting Act. Is the host ready for the question? All those in favour signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? The motion is carried.
Bill 187, entitled an act to make mandatory the reporting of child pornography.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable, the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you please call Bill number 199, the Enforcement of Court Orders Act?
Bill number 199, the Enforcement of Court Orders Act. The Honourable, the Minister of Justice.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Again, this has been an item for us that is important to deal with as we go forward. Mr. Speaker, it has been something I want to thank the honourable colleagues of the House for moving forward through this process, and everything we can do to assist with efficiency and streamlining in our processes, then that's something we've been very pleased to act on. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I think we've had a good deal of debate, and I'm pleased to move third reading.
Is the House ready for the question? The question is for the third reading of Bill number 199, Enforcement of Court Orders Act. All those in favour signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? The motion is carried.
Bill 199, title and act to amend Chapter 40 of the Acts of 2005, the Enforcement of Court Orders Act.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable, the Deputy Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, would you please call Bill number 210, an act to amend Chapter 1 of the Acts of 1995-96, the Education Act.
Bill 210, the Honourable, the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and through you to all members of the legislature here, I would like to thank all members for their careful consideration of this bill. And as been stated in the House before, this bill, the amendments to the Act through this bill will ensure that all students, regardless of what schools they are in or regardless of what school board they're in across this province, will be able to stay at school during the lunch period in their own school without having to pay a fee. And when this was brought to our attention, Mr. Speaker, we recognized that this concern was specific really to one board in our province and really only in part of that board, but it was necessary that we look at an amendment that would bring equity in the provision of lunch supervision to all students. So we certainly appreciate the support, as I said, from all members of the House, and I'm pleased to move third reading of Bill 210.
The Honourable the member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise and speak briefly for a third reading on Bill number 210. I think we support this bill. In essence, we feel that this bill will accomplish a number of things, and we agree that the bill will make it safer for our children in the public school system in Nova Scotia. We also feel that this bill in fact, will enhance the learning environment for our children. We've long made the argument that the school day is made up in part of the lunch hour. We also have some concerns. We heard during law amendments, and I certainly heard as for the last number of months as we led up to this bill, certainly from school boards with particular reference to HRSB. One of around finances being one around the cost that's associated with this, and we would like to ensure that the minister ensure us that she be vigilant and do due diligence so that no hardships will be caused by the implementation of this bill with respect to the classrooms in the province of Nova Scotia. Further, Mr. Speaker, we would hope that the minister will work closely and as soon as possible with school boards and to develop a strategy around not only the recruitment of lunch monitors, but also the retention of those lunch monitors. So with those few things that we'd like to say about the bill, we look forward to this bill becoming law, and those are our reservations.
The Honourable Member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I just want to say a few words to this bill. This started out, of course, Bill 51, our bill that recognizing the need that public education have universal access, and this was a bill to correct a problem that existed in the HRSB system, and I think now with the bill that the minister has brought forward, I think it gives a clear direction to the new Halifax board, and I think they will, in fact, work diligently with the department to make sure that it accomplishes that goal of universality. Also, there is a concern that there will be a period of adjustment. This is a new undertaking for HRSB and for central office to make sure that it works smooth starting in September 2009, and I think the minister's commitment is to make sure that in fact does happen. So I'm pleased to see this bill moving through the House.
If I recognize the Honourable the member for Timberlea Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to add a couple of comments, and I want for the record to make sure that the Minister of Education is aware that on Friday, November the 14th, the acting minister at the time, while the minister was involved with some personal matters, the acting Minister of Education said at that time, on November the 14th, as the members would know, and I'm quoting from Hansard, if I may, Mr. Speaker, as members would know, school boards have a responsibility to provide lunch supervision for students who are transported by bus. That supervision is free, and the Department of Education provides funding for it. The concern that was brought to our attention at law amendments is based upon the fact of the proper formula to make sure that dollars assigned for curriculum reasons are not taken from the important priority of classroom education and classroom curriculum to cover lunch hour supervision. That remains a concern. That's something that's been brought to the members of law amendments, and it's something we're obliged to make sure the Minister of Education will pay due diligence to, and I know in her thoroughness that she will do that. In addition, there's been some concern with questions about the ratio of supervisors at lunch for the number of students that will be in some of these schools, particularly in the HRSB. And I know the minister, and I take her always at her word, she's a pro about these things. She'll consult, she'll make sure that the Halifax Regional School Board and other school boards who have issues with this will make sure that she will undertake to make sure that they're listened to on these particular topics. This is a piece of legislation that it's time to move forward. I thank the previous councillor from Waverley, Fall River, Beaverbank, Ms. Krista Snow. I thank the current member of our provincial legislature and my NDP caucus from Waverley, Fall River, Beaverbank, and I also thank the member from Kings West who showed some initiative on this matter. This is something that's necessary, and if it's properly financed, it certainly will be something that will stand the children of our schools in good stead. With those comments, I'll take my place, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable, the Minister, if I identify the Minister, it'll be to close debate. The Honourable, the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the members opposite, I appreciate the comments. I have heard those, and as Minister of Education, certainly will be monitoring the implementation of this. We recognize that funding to other boards has allowed them to provide this supervision. We recognize there's a significant population in the Halifax Board that will be involved in this, and we will continue to monitor this to make sure that there's no negative impact on students in the classroom. And with that, I would close debate on Bill 210.
The motion before the House is for the third reading of Bill number 210, the Education Act. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favour signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? The motion is carried.
Bill 210, entitled an act to amend Chapter 1 of the Acts of 1995-96, the Education Act.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable, the Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you please call Bill number 217, an act to amend Chapter 11, the Acts of 1992, the Utility and Review Board Act.
Bill number 217. The Honourable, the Minister of Justice.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise and to move third reading of Bill number 217 on behalf of my honourable colleague, the Minister of Finance. As we know, this, Mr. Speaker, deals with the number of members on the board to deal with some of the work items they have and then deal with some of the files pertaining to the insurance industry. So we've had that discussion, and I'm very pleased on behalf of my colleague, Minister of Finance, to move third reading.
The question has been called. The motion is for third reading of Bill number 217, the Utility and Review Board Act. All those in favour signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? The motion is carried.
Bill 217, entitled an act to amend Chapter 11 of the Acts of 1992, the Utility and Review Board Act.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable, the Government House Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I see we're reaching the moment of interruption, but if I could, Mr. Speaker, now, following the moment of interruption, seek the concurrence of the House that when we come back in, that we would go back to Committee of the Whole House on bills.
Is it agreed? Agreed. It's agreed. So at the end of the hour of interruption, then we will come back in the Committee of the Whole House. The Honourable, we are now at the hour of interruption, and the debate tonight was submitted by the Honourable, the member for Pictou West. Therefore, be it resolved that the government do everything within its power to expedite the pension and disbursements to laid-off Trenton workers. The Honourable, the member for Pictou East.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased that this matter was discussed this morning in our caucus and certainly put forward by my colleague, the member for Pictou West. This is a very important issue to Pictou County. It's a very important issue to the 3 MLAs of Pictou County, because all three of us have had sincere concerns about the situation that has taken place at Trenton Works. Mr. Speaker, I have, in fact, been in the plant on 9 occasions before it closed. I dealt with management as often as I dealt with the union. I even put a resolution through this House commending management, commending Bob Hickey and Sandy Stevenson and others in management, commending the Dave Fannings and the union and the Lawrence McKays and so on that took such an important role in trying to keep things going. And Mr. Speaker, I think that it was fundamentally wrong that a company like Greenbrier, that was in fact a viable company, was able to hive off Trenton Works and put that aspect of the company into bankruptcy. Mr. Speaker, that was not criminal, but fundamentally wrong. Fundamentally wrong. Now, I know the Minister of Labour and Workforce Development likes to use his BlackBerry for just about everything, and he has